Welcome back to another video, everyone, and thank you ever so much for being here. We are so close to 100 subs now, we can almost smell it. Subbing is free, and if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe, but if we can hit 100 before the end of April, that would be really, really great, and maybe we'll do a cheeky giveaway here on the channel. Today we have Lotus Field Combo versus Boris Hammertime, brought to you by James and John, our usual commentator duo. In this week's recordings, we have tried to keep a score at the top of the screen on a colourful phone. Let us know what you think. It does help us edit the videos quicker, but if you preferred the on-screen scores like last week, also let us know in the comments. So let's get over to Jay and John for some commentary in this week's game.
Jay, what do you think's going to happen in this game?
I think, what was that intro? Did you need to get your word count up or something?
What? Nah, mate. It's great to sort of when you see something so beautiful and something that should happen, and a lot of times it just doesn't happen. You think, why, man? Why does it happen?
Okay. Well, moving on to the game, it looks like players are removing their sideboard from the previous game. And it looks like we have a cool, interesting matchup today. We've got Lotus Field versus Hammertime.
Yeah.
John, what can you tell me about Hammertime?
Well, this Hammertime list, or this Hammertime player, fairly new to the game, fairly young man, and he's done his best to build what is a quite, it has sort of the fast half of the Hammertime deck, but then it has some redundancies for later in the game to make it still relevant. It runs Brennor Battlehammer, which is an interesting legendary creature that can make equip cost of equipment spells cost 0. So that with Colossus Hammer, that's a free hammer, right, on turn 4, on anything. It also runs Nahiri, Heir of the Ancients. So it's another interesting card, but again, it's sort of that redundancy, right? It's another way to search for equipment. It's another way to get creatures on the board as well, where it can ultimate or -3 to deal damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to twice the number of equipment, so it can open the path for a sort of a game-winning swing. So it's interesting. I think it's all right. It's not the most optimized list, but then, this is F&M, man. And the guy's still on his way to building the list. Well, what do we say? What can you got to say about this Lotus Field deck, Jay?
It's basically just stock Lotus Field. I think they're moving into the changes. Sideboard now runs Zakama, an Elder Gargoth, and a Sphinx of the Final Word. However, I believe that they're hoping to replace that with a Remoka. Anyways, we're right into a game. I believe Hammertime went down to 5 and Lotus Field went down to 6. Both of these decks very good at mulliganing low. We see a Balaged Recovery, the land side, onto the battlefield, and then I can't pronounce that, Cacophony Scamp. Oh, and a Shadow Spear.
Oh, right. That is a one-of in the deck as well. So sometimes these one-ofs just get drawn, but and an impulse at the end of turn to dig from the Lotus Field player.
It looks like they found a Lotus Field off that impulse, which is exactly what they want. Oh, it looks like their hand has 2 more impulses and an Arboreal Grazer. That's pretty mad. The Shadow Spear is really good in aggressive against mid-range matchups, because usually mid-range beating you down while stopping what you're doing. Shadow Spear, the lifelink, and the trample to get over those blockers matters a lot. If you get Shadow Spear and a hammer down, you're going to be gaining 12 life every time you attack, and it's got trample. So Shadow Spear, even though it's a one-off, very good in this deck.
It is, but would it be fast enough to get past the Lotus Field before it can go off? Like, we
do see Lotus Field. I'm not sure about the way he picked up his lands there, sort of into his hand and then put them into the graveyard. Probably just
it could be a little dodge, but I imagine
I mean, we know
Yeah.
that those are the lands that he played. I would just watch out on doing that. In a proper tournament with a judge watching. That's why
Yeah.
whenever you watch a proper tournament, you always see the players put their hand down 3 miles away and then go look at other cards.
Oh yeah, but local F&M. I believe everyone watching or everyone involved knows exactly what's going on, and it's interesting. And it's interesting that the Lowe'sfield player tap two had impulse, but chose not to play the Boil Grazer. I guess it would have maximized the mana efficiency of that turn properly.
Yeah, it looks like they're cycling Vizier now to draw, hopefully, into more answers. Yeah,
And with the
I feel like
stage,
Hammertime really needs to be faster. I'm not sure what they have in their hand. It looks like it might be the instant that equips equipment to a creature to a warrior for free.
yeah, and Cacophony Scamp is indeed a warrior, I believe, a goblin warrior, a
Phyrexian Goblin
Phyrexian
Warrior.
goblin warrior.
Yeah.
Has a lot of creature types. Has a lot of creature types it can fall into.
Yes, and we
Um,
now see a third impulse. Well, that is a lot of impulses.
hmm. Another thing about Cacophony Scamp, which might play for the planeswalkers quite well, is that what you can sack it to proliferate whenever it deals combat damage.
Yes, the big reason it's in the deck is obviously to sack it when you've got the hammer on it to get the turn
To
2
double
kill.
kill.
Yeah, it basically gives the thing double strike and lets you whack them twice with an 11/11 on turn 2 potentially. We do see
Yeah.
the hammer come down. I maybe the player doesn't have a way to equip the hammer. Otherwise, they presumably would have done that last turn to win the game.
Yeah, and a lot of and the Louisville player, I believe, is going off in a way where he's sort of digging through. He still needs to reach that combo.
No, I think they can just play an emergent ultimatum now. Because if they do have
Outright.
2 floating, then they should be able to make 3 black, 3 green.
Oh, that looks like exactly what's going on here. I think he's looking for the appropriately colored dice to represent the mana.
An emergent ultimatum. Yeah. So basically, when emergent ultimatum goes off, it usually ends up just being the game for Lotus Field. Because
We've seen. Sorry.
Yeah, they get omniscience and 2 tutors, and if the opposing player chooses to put omniscience back in the deck, the Lotus Field player can just go search for it. They can tutor for it, and they usually have enough in their hand to be able to draw.
Yeah, and I believe he still has a blue floating, another blue on the field. So another untapped land effect in hand would just mean whatever happens, he'll just have it, right?
Yeah, and it looks like the Lotus Field player is just playing omniscience for free, and then probably playing Dark Petition. I believe this one is.
That's one of the two sort of tutor effects. He's discarding his whole hand, and he's going. He's got to go.
This one is Behold the Beyond. So you discard your hand, you search for 3 cards and put those into your hand. So the Lotus Field player is getting Mastermind's Acquisition,
Yeah.
Dark Petition, and I don't know what the third card is. Mastermind's Acquisition allows you to get a card from outside the game.
Yeah, it's a wish effect, and just like my spiel in the beginning, where these two just cannot be together. I bet there is a small part of him that wishes they could.
I think the Lotus Field players just showed what they're going to do. So their Mastermind's Acquisition, you shuffle the Approach to the Second Sun into the deck, you Dark Petition to go and find the Approach to the Second Sun, you play Approach to the Second Sun. The Lotus Field player had a... I'm blanking right now. The 5 mana creature Leah, that's it. Leah. So it
Oh,
gives everything
lovely,
in your
yeah.
graveyard flashback. You still have to pay the mana cost for flashback, even if you
Mm,
do have omniscience out. But I believe they would have been able to, considering they could cast anything from their hand for free,
yeah.
and then they would be able to shoot it again for the approach to the second sun. And there's probably about 3 or 4 different ways they could have done it to go get that approach to the second sun back.
Yeah, an interesting sideboard tech from the Hammertime player in here is the Stone Brain. So it's a card that hilariously is a generic artifact that can allow you to sort of just dig through your opponent's deck, graveyard, hand, whatever, and just pick a card and remove them all from the game. It's it's insane, and I think for the cost it is 2 mana to play, 2 mana to activate. If the Lotus Field player doesn't get Lotus Field quick enough, there's a chance that he'll just lose them all,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah.
a much slower game plan all of a sudden.
Yeah, Stonebrain is really good. You can name anything with it. It's any card name. And you
Mhm.
get to go search for 4 of them and remove them from the game. And Stonebrain, you get to exile that as well.
Yeah,
And so you can name Lotus Field if they don't have one down yet, which if you're on the play, you could potentially turn 2 Stonebrain, turn 3, activate Stonebrain, and usually Lotus
Mhm.
Field, unless they have the Arboreal Grazer, Lotus Field, and 2 lands in their hand at the beginning, usually don't have Lotus Field until turn 3, which means you can usually Stonebrain them. Also, Stonebrain on Thespian stage isn't that bad, or if you have multiple Stonebrains, hitting
hitting.
the two wish cards, so Mastermind's Acquisition and
Mhm.
Bay of Wishes.
Why?
Although because the main board doesn't actually play any win conditions really.
No,
So if you get
but
those 2 cards, but after sideboard they may have brought in win conditions. But if you are able to get those cards, then you may win. It looks like the Lotus Field player brought in a Path of Peril and
all right,
also a Zakama, that looks like.
it makes sense. Path of Peril to deal with sort of the early creature aggression, and it looks like the Hammertime player is keeping, whereas the Lotus Field player is mulliganing, even with a Path of Peril in hand. Maybe he doesn't have enough mana, but probably he's
Yeah.
looking for that Lotus
Yeah,
Field.
without a Lotus Field, you can't even cast Path of Peril, so it becomes a lot worse.
Mm.
So, Zakama, you've probably not seen it that much. It is a 9 mana, 9/9 Elder Dinosaur. It's got Vigilance,
Oh,
Reach, Trample. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you get to untap all lands you control, which for Lotus Field is quite good.
that is
And
pretty
then
good.
you can pay 3 mana to deal 3 damage to target creature. You can pay 3 mana to destroy target artifact or enchantment. You can pay 3 mana to gain 3 life. So if it comes down and untaps your lands, you get to blow up, a hammer and kill all of the creatures on the Hammertime side. So if they get to resolve it, I believe that would just be game against Hammertime.
Okay, so is it also a monocolored card? Is that also searchable by?
It is a Naya card, so it's red, green, and white. And the abilities, the damage one costs red, the destroy target artifact enchantment costs green,
Mm.
and the gain life costs white. However, none of that really matters because usually they will have a Lotus Field on the board, which makes 3 mana of 1 color, which is perfect for what Zakama wants.
Yeah, and we do see there's a turn 1, turn 2 play. I can't exactly read this one
It's
on
Kargan
their board.
Intimidator, and then they play a special art Lizard Blades.
All right, so very aggressive on the board. And if the Lotus Field player did what he did last game and only do Lotus Field tap turn 3 impulse, there's a chance with a double strike equip on the 3/1 that it could be just a bit too quick for this one for the Lotus Field deck this
Yeah,
game.
it looks like Kargan Intimidator, the Hammertime player, is choosing to buff it. So that was 5 damage coming in there.
Oh, and a Beseiju to deal with the Lizard Blades. And you're able to search for most surprisingly, I didn't realize this. So this doesn't say basic lands.
Yeah,
It specifies
basic
island.
card type.
Yeah. So you could search for shock lands or cards that have the plains or islands subtype next to it.
Well, plains,
Or
islands,
so on.
mountain, forest.
Mountain. Yeah. Not
Yeah.
swamps. I
Yeah,
don't believe.
swamps.
Oh, can it?
Yeah. You get anything. It doesn't say plains, island. It says that player may search their library for a land card with a basic land type.
Well, I'm a man that will admit that I've learned something new today. And I appreciate it.
Yeah,
But-
it's something that they don't do very much nowadays. Wizards don't print many cards that allow you to search for cards with basic land type.
Yeah, normally they're restricting it heavily to basic
Just-
lands, period.
Just
But
basic lands, especially if you look at the past few sets. The searching, especially ramp cards, they just don't let you search. There's no more far seeks, unfortunately.
no. Oh, and
Open the
open
armory.
the armory. Yeah, the search for equipment.
So presumably they're gonna go get a hammer. I don't know what's in their hand. Hopefully they have a way to equip the hammer.
I believe there was a hammer in hand. This might be looking for an Embercleave.
I
Oh,
don't
no.
really see a shadow spear, but maybe
shadow
Embercleave was the right play. Giving double strike to the Kargan Intimidator right now seems alright, but I don't think they have enough attackers to play an Embercleave this turn.
No, but it would have been a decent setup. But I guess if you're expecting to lose next turn, because Lotus Field surviving this turn is most likely going to happen. Attack it in for 4? 5, I believe.
Yeah, 5 with the shadow spear equipped, so that takes the opponent down to 9 life.
Okay. And he gains 4 life. And there seems to be a bit of outside tampering going on. Don't know who that was.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure about that. Maybe it was the judge looking to make sure he had all the correct lands. I'm not too certain about it.
Another thing to point out about the about this particular Hammertime deck. Have you seen the amount of basics?
Yeah, I think they nearly run all basics in their deck, which, is fine. In fact, looking at their deck list, they run all basics and then 3 pathways. But if it works, it works. They have enough white and red, usually. In a 2-color deck, you can actually get away with basics a lot of the time.
And here we see the Thespian stage come down after Lotus Field. Does the Lotus Field player have the combo?
It looks like they have a Path of Peril, so even if they don't have a combo, the board is getting wiped for the Hammertime player time. I believe that instead of just going for the Path of Peril, that they're just going to go for the win instead, which is fair enough. Here we see a pour of the pages.
Yep, and this is, in a previous video, we talked about how one deck seemed like it was just going to win outright. And then the next turn, just combo out, just be able to untap Lotus Field, dig through the deck continuously, just pushing that combo as far as it can feasibly go, up until he's able to get into the ultimatum to eventually win the game on the spot, possibly.
It is crazy how Lotus Field can turn a game around in just one turn. I believe it is the deck where even if you're ahead, unless you've got loads of counters in your hand, you shouldn't feel too secure.
Yeah, and I believe there's a reason why Lotus Field deck, where it's very different from Tron, right? A lot of people say this is like the Tron of Pioneer, but Tron doesn't combo. It can't really sort of have like this massive win condition. Tron wins almost exclusively on value, whereas this deck, yes, it's combo to value, but to be able to just break it out on a turn where an opponent cannot interact with you, where an opponent cannot even sort of stop most of the plays, it is just so backbreaking.
I think we might be seeing an Elder Gargoth here, because it looks like they're 3 green, 3 blue, and we saw a Path of Peril take out all of the creatures. They might just be going for a basic, bonk with creature win, and it looks like that's what they are going for.
Elder Gargoth is a very good card in this matchup as well.
It is. It gains a lot of life. It's a huge blocker. Vigilance is a big thing.
Could make more creatures as well, just to pressure the life points. And we do see a Colossus Hammer come down, and we might be also seeing the beginning of the end for the Hammertime player.
Yeah, it looks like Hammertime has no more creatures to play. It seems quite unlucky. They've drawn as many lands as they have spells, but they only have 20 lands in their deck. So I would consider this flooding slightly.
It is flooding, especially since none of the sort of payoffs shown up either, right? We've had 2 creatures, which are good targets. 3 creatures, even if you include the Lizard Blades, and then that was it. There was no Resolute Strikes. There was no Sagada's Aid, which this player only runs 2 of. Which, could be down to just how expensive the card is. Like I said, this deck is sort of built on a budget, really. And the Lotus Field player is in such an advantageous position. You wouldn't think so exclusively on the life points, but the Lotus Field player has just stabilized, and in fact has taken over the game. I can't see many top decks where it's possible for the Hammertime player to actually get through.
Yeah, but I do think you still have to be at least a tiny bit afraid of what Hammertime is capable of. You don't know the last card in hand. It could be a Resolute Strike, but very unlikely. And if they're able to get a creature down, equip it, and then attack, Fireblade Charger does have haste if it's equipped, then
all right,
they would gain a lot of life, they would kill Elder Gargoth, and they would bring the Lotus Field player down very, very low. So I think Lotus Field is just going to try go for the combo win whilst feeling safe because they got Elder Gargoth down. I believe that the Lotus player is trying to think what they can get with Mastermind's acquisition. And they also have a Balaged Recovery in their hand.
All right. Well, we'll see what the... So he's deciding to look at the 3 cards in his deck. Keep in mind, that is a mode. It's one of the 2 things you can do with that card.
Yeah.
I believe the other mode is from outside the game, Mastermind's acquisition.
Yeah, so the modes are search a library for a card, put it into your hand, and then choose a card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand.
So it's either a wish effect or a tutor, which both sides are very relevant. Because as we've seen, there were some good sideboard cards. A win condition, like you said, Jay, in the sideboard.
It looked like they got Zakama into their hand.
All right. So going big in this game. And he could have searched for Ultimatum.
I'm not sure there's enough mana to it. They might have taken Ultimatum out. I believe the Lotus player tonight is trying to see how far they can push their sideboard and how much they can take cards out and bring in alternate win cons against these aggressive decks.
Yeah, and Elder Gargoth is a very good alternate win con in this position. We also see Elder Gargoth show up in some mono green lists as well. This is, I believe, an answer to sort of aggressive strategies, as well as just other types of strategies that try to deal with sort of what they think is the key card. We saw this in the most recent Pro Tour, where Reed Duke, the eventual Pro Tour champion, would take out the actual combo of his deck and just win on the value of his cards alone.
Yeah, Reed Duke won a lot of those games just with Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Shark Typhoon tokens, which, whilst the opponent had to hold up loads of counter spells and kill spells to be able to deal with the combo that they thought was coming.
Yeah, and it's another facet of like sideboarding which has come up, which I think has always been there but never really explored, is that you sideboard into a different win condition, or if you have 2 win conditions, you try to focus more on one than the other, right?
Yeah, and here we see Zakama came down, untapped the lands. They had 3 Lotus Fields up, so they were able to destroy an artifact twice, so they got rid of Shadow Spear and the hammer, and then they were able to deal 3 damage to Skrelv, or they could have just destroyed artifact on Skrelv as well. So I believe the Hammertime player has just lost here. Zakima and Elder Gargoyle, that's too much.
That top deck land, what a feel bad.
Yeah, a definite mana flood for the Hammertime player, which is quite bad, especially because they do have Nahiri in their deck that can draw. Maybe they need more Nahiris so they can sort of filter through their deck in these longer